To be empowered. Today I have the Major Asher Shimray. He's a syndicator, he's a coach. He's coming today to talk with us about market research. Welcome, Ashton. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself today?
Family industry for the last 7 years. When I graduated college, I went and started off as a personal assistant to a multifamily broker. And that's kind of one of my first introductions to the industry. Learned a lot about the sales brokerage, how they're run. Met a fair number of large multifamily buyers in the area of Utah that I was in at the time.
Okay.
And then I wanted to give myself a well-rounded education in real estate and also get paid to do it. So I went and took a job in property management and helped with the management of a 350 unit apartment complex. And then from there, I went and did some lending. So I was a construction loan administrator and learned all about the lending side of real estate, and that was really great. So, and then since then, I've been in the investing arena in multifamily. I currently own properties in and around the Dallas metro, so like the tertiary markets outside of the Dallas metro, so places like Tyler, Texas, Waco, Texas, Wichita Falls, Texas, um, that kind of area. And then I also own properties in Southeast Idaho. So those are my areas, my markets of focus. I think there's some great things about those markets. So, and then I also live in Southeast Idaho, so that helps too. But um, yeah, I'm a big believer in multifamily. I'm a big believer in the value that you can create through this asset class and the lives you can impact through the asset class. So there's some great benefits about being in this industry. Um, and it's always fun to meet great people who are getting started in the industry like you, Zarnita. So,
Thank you. Like, can you tell us some more of the roles that goes with multifamily?
yeah. So I think at its most foundational, there's probably four main roles in a multifamily syndication. You need to have someone doing acquisitions, so someone who finds the property, gets it under contract, and buys it. You need to have someone who manages the asset manager. Then you need to have someone who brings the money to the deal, so the capital raiser or the investor relations manager. And then if you are a newer syndicator, you're also going to need a sponsor. So that to me is the most foundational way you could break it out. Now you could break out those roles even more if you're working on a larger team. So like the acquisitions, there's a lot that goes into it, like market research, due diligence, underwriting. So you could break out that role and have there be more people who are filling that acquisitions role. Um, but at its most foundational, I think it can be fairly simple. And there's a lot. I mean, you can decide for yourself what seat you want to play, what seat you want to fill in that team, based off of what your interests are. So if you're a really gregarious people person, you might find more success as a capital raiser than as an underwriter or as an acquisitions manager. If you're more of a, like me, I tend to be more of a introvert the side of an introvert and more of a numbers guy. So I like the acquisition side where I'm working with less, it's less of a public facing role, I guess you could say. So,
Gotcha.
mhm.
Best websites to go to with like starting like new beginners and stuff.
Yeah. So if you live in a primary market, and that would be a market with over 1 million people, I would go to Marcus and Millichap's website and look at their market reports. Um, and then you can also look at tools like the Bureau of Labor Statistics has a website called bls.gov, and they
Okay.
publish a lot of really good job data on there. And for me, one of the most important indicators, I mentioned my five big indicators, but the two most important for me are job growth and population growth. So you can go on the bls.gov website and you can research the job growth in your market and see how many jobs are coming in, um, how much the job market is growing there, and compare that to other markets. You can also use websites like citydata.com. That's city-data.com. That's got some great resources. That website pulls information from all over the internet and presents a whole bunch of really good information about each city in the United States. So I would go research there. You can see things like population growth in the city. You can see things like median home values and how those have changed. You can see things like crime rates, um, and median household incomes in every little sector of your city. So that's a really great tool. That's city-data.com. Um, as far as other resources, there's some great paid resources if you want to buy an account on CoStar or Crexi Intelligence.
Okay.
Um, so just depends on what you want to do, but there's some great free stuff out there as well.
Okay. Why is market research critical to real estate syndication?
Yeah, that's a great question. So real estate syndication, like the market research portion of that comes in when you're trying to maximize the return to your investors, right? So in the United States, we've got 400 markets or metropolitan statistical areas. That's a term set by the census. And all these markets, they're all unique in their own way. Some of them are growing really rapidly. Some of them are growing but slowly. Some of them are losing people and jobs. So to be a good syndicator, you need to make sure that you're buying a property for your investors in the best market that's going to grow the most, because that's going to help you get a lot of tenants, and that is going to help you increase the rents. That's going to help you have more equity in your property when you go to sell. So you could buy a market in a, or sorry, you could buy a property in any market that you want, but some of the markets you're going to get a much higher return on your investment from. So when we're doing market research, we're looking for indicators of growth, that will help us to get and lock in the best returns for our investors. So that's kind of the importance of market research. And there's a lot to market research as far as what things are important versus not important to look at. Going out and visiting the market is a very helpful thing to do. Um, but yeah, I think of market research as being kind of the foundational element of the purchase process in a syndication. So you start there, you know where you're looking, and then you build up, you underwrite properties, and you do all these other things. But it should all be based in a good, solid emerging market. So I look for five big indicators. I look for markets that have some good population and job growth. And when I'm looking, if you want specific guidelines as far as numbers, I look for markets where the population growth is north of 1% on a yearly basis, and job growth is better than the United States over the short and medium and long term. Specifically, if I can find markets where job growth is growing at 2% per year, that's what I like to see. And then I also look for markets where their vacancy is trending down. So I do want to see that those units that are currently there are being filled. And then I like to look for markets where rent growth is around 4%. Um, and then last but not least, I look for markets where there's a cap rate of somewhere in the six ballpark. So I find that across all those metrics, if the market is hitting most of those metrics, then that's a very good indicator about the strength of the economy in that market. There should be plenty of people, plenty of jobs getting in that market, plenty of tenants for us to potentially rent to. So yeah, those are my big five that I look for when I'm doing market research. So right now we're in kind of an interesting situation nationally where like in 2020, 2021, and 2020, the first half of 2022, we were in a very strong seller's market. There was a lot of interest from a lot of buyers. That has cooled down significantly since the first half of 2022, and it's been cooling down since then. Um, and now we're in a situation where it's somewhere in the middle between a buyer and a seller's market. Um, and depending on which, and that's at a national scale, and depending on which market you look at in the United States or which metropolitan area, the specifics of that market will be a little bit different. So some markets are like losing, property values are going down right now. There's just a lot of loss. And then in other markets in the United States, there's things are still growing at a relatively good rate. So there's always that dichotomy between the national market and the individual metro areas when you're looking at market research. Start making some investments and grow their abilities as a market researcher. I think it's good just to go get started looking at different resources online and educating yourself about what's out there is in terms of market research. So, for example, all of the big brokerages in the United States, like CBRE, Marcus and Millichap, Cushman Wakefield's, JLL, all these guys will publish some kind of market research help for syndicators, well, not for syndicators specifically, but for commercial real estate buyers. And so you can start looking at their information that they publish on their websites. Marcus and Millichap specifically has some of the best ones. They do really good reports for all of the major primary markets in the United States. So if you're someone who's got an interest in learning about that and learning how to research markets, I would say just get started by reading. And then once you've done some good amount of reading online, then you can call and talk to locals in the markets that you're looking into. And the way I think about it is markets are really, whether a market is really good or really bad, it almost is a factor of the what you're comparing it to, right? So if your market is really hot or really cold, it's helpful to know how the other markets in the United States are doing. So you can compare and say, well, I know this market's really hot because every other market is it's not doing as well as this market. So like right now, especially, we've got a lot of markets that are in negative rent growth because of during 2022 and 2021, 2022, there was some really high rent growth. And so now we're regressing to the mean. And normally, if a market's in negative rent growth, that would be a very bad indicator. But if you know that this market, like if you take a subject market and you compare it to a lot of the other markets in the United States, um, you can get the national context and say, okay, well, this market is negative rent growth right now, but because I know what's going on in all the other markets, I can decide whether or not this is really the bad negative rent growth that I should stay away from this market, or is this just a temporary negative rent growth because of what happened over the last couple of years with positive rent growth? So for someone to learn market research, I say just get started, look at Marcus and Millichap, um, and there's a couple of other good websites out there. Like I mentioned, CBRE has some good
Okay.
reports. So just getting started. I'm a big fan of taking action, and lots of people will get stuck in market research, kind of in an analysis paralysis kind of
Yeah.
phase. And so that's not good. But you do want to take action as soon as you can, and as soon as you are comfortable with what you know. And so,
Ashley, I want to thank you again for being on Be Empowered, the podcast. You can find it on Spotify. You can also check out the full interview on YouTube at my name, Zanetta Cruz. Check you out later. Thank you.